Conversations are a rich source of ideas because in those conversations, you get a sense of what the other person or persons are thinking and feeling. And through some reflection, while they're during or after, you start to gain some of those insights, those interpretations. But there's times, and I think you would probably agree with me, you sort of scratch your head and go, I'm not sure that I quite believe what that's about. You may not bring it up at the time, sometimes you do, but through this reflection, you sort of go, that's kind of interesting. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've paid a little bit more attention when I've had some of these great mentoring conversations. And persons have been asking me, why is mentoring important and how do you mentor? And a lot of the just sort of startup kind of questions. And I just sort of sat back the other day, and that prompted this video is because what's some of that conversational advice that I'm hearing, and I'm sure others are hearing, that's eroding our mentoring as legacy relationships? Sometimes that conversational advice can actually, when you hear it or even take it into action, it sort of negates, it confronts the mentoring relationships that you're having. And I thought that I would just explore this. And so I sat down in my reflective journal and I said, what are some of those ways in which I might, through myths or statements of belief, that are actually eroding mentoring relationships? And so I pulled from some of my friends. I did a little bit of research, see what other people are saying, and I came up with these seven. So I thought that I would share them with you just so that you had something to work with yourself and sort of decide, are they true for you? And if they're not true, then what would you do if you heard them? So I have actually devised my own tactics if I hear these again, what it is that I'm going to do. So let me give you the first one, and let's sort of see where this takes us. The first one is just tell them what to do. And I went, hang on a minute. Mentoring isn't about telling the mentee what to do. Mentoring is about encouraging the mentee to ask questions of you, the mentor, and then to get into conversations, collaborative conversations to explore what's going on. So I always remember is that what really becomes important here is to help the mentee understand how to ask a great question and then start looking at suggestions, different ways in which to look at it. But at no time get to a point where you just tell them what to do and send them on their way. That is just not what mentoring is about. Now, for some other education approaches, that may be a strategy you want to use, but I would certainly suggest ease off on this one. You don't want to see this very often. The next one is always keep it professional. And I'm sort of chuckling laughing here is because one of the things that I have found to be of great value over time, and I've had many of my mentoring friends and even some of the students that I've been interacting with have said that the chuckles, the well, sometimes you get belly laugh, an occasional snort. Those are very helpful in the mentoring relationship because what they do is they bring the human element, this humor into the connection that you're establishing. I said that is so true. It's finding then the humor, that simply serious fun that matches with the person you're interacting with, the mentee, and them interacting with you. You don't want to use things like satire. I'm not great at satire. Sometimes I'll sort of make fun of myself. I have a really great story is that as a whitewater rafting guide, my nickname was Hobbit. And if you know, they're kind of smaller sized creatures. And I'm 6'7", so I'm actually two hobbits in one. And that was always kind of a fun way in which to introduce myself and then have some conversations that followed after that. But you want to extend those boundaries and find ways in which to bring that humor into what's going on, but also what's happening in the mentee's life, not to the point of interfering with the life or giving so much of your own life that you're feeling as though you're just laying too much out on the table. There's that balance of finding what is going to be best for that mentoring relationship. The next one is only focus on big wins. Hang on a minute. There's some small achievements along the way that can really be a wonderful way in which to encourage and support. There's been a couple of times where just having a conversation and saying something as simple as, well, thank you for that idea. You can see the difference it makes for the mentee. Or to be able to say, that's a really great achievement. Can you just tell me a little bit more about what you were thinking and feeling at the time and just sort of unpack it a little bit more? So don't always go for what's the big wins. Sometimes, well, we made our markers, our measures, or our metrics, and just use those. Sometimes it's really about what is it that's made a difference for you as a person, and being able to explain those thoughts and feelings at the time. So I would encourage you to sort of dig around, ask the mentee what are some things that they've achieved that they want to share about. Here's one. Come on, don't avoid the difficult conversations. If there's a difficult conversation to be had, have it. For example, mentee sort of comes late all the time. Well, that's going to be a difficult conversation to be had. You're going to have to dig into it. What's going on? And maybe you find that it would be better for both of you to meet a half an hour later or 15 minutes later because of something that's going on in the mentee's life. There's difficult conversations that have to be had, especially when you, as the mentor, in a sense, almost intuit there's something that's not quite correct here, and you need to be able to deal with it. Maybe there's an honesty issue, a respect issue, a fairness issue, and you need to dig around in there and find out what's going on. So don't let those slide by because they really do make a difference. The next one is stick to your methods. There's one way of mentoring, and that's how I'm going to do it. That's what I'm encouraging you to do it because it's always worked for me. I don't know if you've ever heard that. I've heard it a couple of times. Well, one of the things, again, that I've learned along the way is that each mentee has a uniqueness about them. Yes, there's some commonality, but there's some uniqueness there that if you were to stay in the same method, the same approach, using the same techniques, the same tools, you might find that you don't get the move ahead that you would like to see. And so you have to test out a little bit here, experiment a little bit, and find out what's available to work with. So don't go into it thinking, well, this morning I used this approach, this afternoon I'm going to use the same approach, and whatever happens, that's what's going to take place because the morning works, so I know the afternoon will work. May not. And so you're going to have to take a look at it. So just remaining open to new ideas. And this is why interacting with the mentee and asking about what's going on is really important, which links into the next one that you've got to take a look at. This one is near and dear to my heart. You do need feedback. You do need what I call feed forward. And I learned this one when I was working with a telecommunications company, working with their mid-level managers, and they were looking at who they wanted to promote. And they were going through an interview up leveling kind of workshop. And I was interviewing the candidates and picking up ideas about what they would do in certain kind of situations, and then doing some role playing. Well, occasionally, a person who is in the mix and had interacted with me might just ask a question like, well, how's it going? And I was told not to give them any kind of coaching. But I said, how about I gave them a little bit of mentoring and turned it around and said, well, what is it that you're picking up? And why don't you put it through your own reflective lens and see what comes for you? And they sort of, some of them went, okay. Others, hey, that's a really great idea. But what was really interesting is for those who sort of went, a couple of them actually came back later and said, you gave me one of the best pieces of support by just getting me to go into myself and reflecting on what's taking place. I said, well, that's really what feed forward is about. Feedback has this sort of history about what took place and bringing it back into the present. But feed forward is thinking about what's going on now so that you can move forward. So you have that presence view of what's taking place now and bringing a reflection on what's taking place into what you're doing. So it's a slightly different way of looking at it. And the seventh one that I would just mention is keeping all relationships the same. That piece of advice just does not cut it. There is so much diversity, all right, in who we are and what it is that we bring to whatever the mentoring relationship is about. And I personally love this notion of diversity and having all these different kind of conversations because it improves focuses and strengthens my mentor approach by opening up and not thinking about every relationship as being the same. So I would encourage you to think about it from that perspective as well. So by bringing all of these ideas that in some ways may erode your mentoring or relationship, the thumbnail suggested of the video is dump all of that conversational advice around these 7 ideas and throw them in the trash can because they're really of no use. And then find the approach that works for you so that what you do is you take best practices and let them become wise practices. And that is a great way in which to improve focus and strengthen your mentoring approach. So I encourage you to take these insights and see what you can do with them. And again, subscribe and comment and share and look at a couple of the other videos that are around here because there's some really wonderful updates and videos about tools and techniques that would be of great use to you on the channel. So with that, take care.